awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm Paige. I'm an addict and so grateful to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much, Brian. And where we're going to be picking up is on page 24, and it is the second full paragraph, the almost certain consequences. And what we wrapped up with last week was the paragraph in the italics. And the last line of that paragraph brings us to this point. That last line tells us we are without defense against the first drink. To extrapolate to Cocaine Anonymous, we are without defense against the relapse. I will relapse. And that is what we are talking about. That is a step one proposition. That is a step one idea that I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober. But on my own power, I cannot stay sober. That's what we're trying to see. So it says the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. So the almost certain consequences that happen when I take a drink, or I have a hoot, or I pop a pill, or I smoke something. You guys know what I'm saying? Those almost certain consequences are the result of the physical allergy. But the physical allergy is not the thing that we're focusing on here. What we're focusing on is that they do not crowd into the mind to deter us. Those consequences do not come to mind. And that is the obsession of the mind. That I cannot see the consequences, that I cannot, we were talking last week, I can't play the tape to the end. I can't think through the drink. I can't think through the hoot. I can't do it. And it says, if these thoughts occur, so if I do get a nagging feeling that this might not be such a good idea, it says, if these thoughts occur, they're hazy. That might not be a good idea, a bit of a hazy thought, not a solid nope, but a maybe. Hazy and readily supplanted. Now, supplanted means replaced. So this might not be a good idea. It doesn't carry any weight, and it's easily replaced with the old threadbare idea. Now, to be threadbare is worn out. That old, you got your favorite shirt. Some of you boys know what it's like to have your favorite pair of boxer shorts, and they are threadbare. You know what I'm saying? Your girlfriends are trying to throw them out. You know what I mean? Yeah, some of you know, right? Worn out. This old worn out idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. See, I might try to raise the thought this time that, I don't want to do it. Or I might get my thoughts that are like, hey, there's consequences. But that is immediately pushed aside with this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And those are those old, worn out ideas. It goes on to say, there's a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. And if you're writing in your book today, make a note to see page 84. Now, we're not going to go there right away, but we're going to talk about this. You see, it goes on to say the alcoholic or the addict may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow? I'll be frank with you, I'm a what's the use anyhow sort of gal, you know what I mean? And so when we talk about this metaphor, that the addict is like somebody who has no defense from putting their hand on the hot stove, I want to emphasize the problem is not that the stove is hot, but my problem is that I cannot stop myself from touching the stove. You see, when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated, I get a thought. And that thought looks like, you know what? The stove, it was hot in Calgary, but I'm in the UK. You guys got different stoves. It'll be different this time. Or it looks like, my problem. Listen, you guys, my problem is those electric stoves. That's my issue. I can do the gas stoves, It looks like, what, I'm in Canada and it is chilly willikers, it is cold. Oh, if you were chilly like I was chilly, man, you need to touch the stove. Just get a moment of its warmth, right? And some of you, if I told you what the temperatures could be in winter, you'd be like, that almost sounds plausible, girl. It's cold, -30 in the winter. Absolutely. But it also looks like, man, if you're feeling the way that I was feeling, if you went through what I went through, you'd have to touch the hot stove too. I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I touch the hot stove? It looks like I don't even think, and I go and I touch the hot stove. But it also looks like a thought, a compulsive thought that is on me all day that tells me I've got to touch that stove. And again, the problem is not that the stove is hot, but my real problem is that in and of myself, I cannot stop myself from touching the hot stove. So what is our solution? Well, my friend Babe's been coming. I don't think he's here today, but he was saying, oh, girl, that is real a linear path you've been taking. So you know what we got to do? If I'm being too linear, we got to bounce. So let's bounce around to page 84. We'll go to the very bottom paragraph. Page 84. Bounce. You don't have to bounce if you don't want to. All of this is consensual. Feel free to not do it, but that's where I'm going to be. Very bottom paragraph of page 84. It's right below the line, love and tolerance of others is our code. Even on the M1, even on the A4. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, even on the A1, even on the M8, love and tolerance of others is our code. And here's the thing, often when we talk about love and tolerance of others is our code, we try to raise a tolerance to just put up with you. But the truth of the matter is it says love and tolerance. See, I got to lead with love. I can't lead with tolerance and hope I build love. I've got to lead with love, and that will allow that tolerance to exist. Anywho, focusing. It says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. So this is the 10th step promises. A lot of times in the rooms, we talk about the 9th step ones as if they are the promises. We got promises all over this bad boy. And you see, if on page 24, my problem is that I cannot stop myself from touching the hot stove. I can't stop myself from taking the first drink, the first drug, the first hit, the first high. If that is my problem, this is what I need as a solution. And nothing less than what we're going to read here. And I am doomed to drink again. I am doomed to use again. I am doomed to relapse. So it says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. You ever hear or ever say, I'm going to really fight it this time? I can't win that fight. I'm up against a fight I can never win. I have no defense. I am defenseless. It's going to get me every single time. But now, at step 10, and actively practicing step 10, the fight is over. It says, for by this time, sanity will have returned. And when we talk about insanity, what we are specifically referring to is just the obsession of the mind. The thought that I have when I'm sober that tells me I can drink or I can use or I can, you know what I mean? I can have a hoot a crack again. That thought. And so when we talk about sanity will have returned, what we are specifically talking about is the obsession of the mind is gone. It is lifted. And it says we will seldom be interested in liquor or cocaine or any other mind-altering substance. We're not interested. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. You see, on page 24, I cannot stop myself from touching the hot stove. But you see, on page 84, I see the stove is hot, and I don't want to touch it. That is the freedom that we get. And that's where I need to get, and I can't get there on my own thinking or on my own trying or on my own willpower or just coming to meetings. How I get there is I have to get to step 10 and actively be utilizing the 10th step. That is how I get this freedom. So it says we react sanely and normally. And what that means is I know the stove is hot and I don't want to touch it. And we will find that this has happened automatically. Again, I'm not raising a defense. I don't have a defense that is sufficient. I know because I've tried to raise defense and defense and defense, and none of it has worked. And it says, we will see that a new attitude toward liquor or toward drugs has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. Now, when we say it just comes, we mean that. It just comes. But the work that I have to do to get there is, again, very specifically 4 through 9, and continuing that process in step 10. That is what I've got to do to get there. It says that is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. And you know, at the third step, we make a decision. The third step is simply a decision. I won't say just, because it's a big one. It is simply a decision to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And in the third step, my will and my life does not get turned over to the care of God in the third step. My will and my life gets turned over to God's care in 4 through 9, as I continue that process in 10, 11, and 12. And in the third step, I do not know if my will and my life will be cared for. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know. It's really, the third step is a leap of faith. But any time in this book I read a promise, and deeper than that, anytime in this book I experience the promise as it is outlined in this book, that becomes irrefutable evidence of God's care. My will and my life is being cared for. My friend Terry, who stole it from Babe, I'm pretty sure, talks about how this thing is a book of mirrors. I'm meant to hold up my experience to this book. And on page 24, I'm looking to see, is this me? Is this me? Do I have this illness? But on page 84, on page 85, I'm looking to see, is this my experience? Am I having this awakening? Because as true as it is, as I'm the person on page 24, if I take the actions as outlined in steps 4 through 9 and keep it going in 10, 11, and 12, is just as true as that I am the person on 84, 85. But again, I got to take the action to get there. So it says, it just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. That is what it means to be a recovered addict. The problem is gone. It is removed. It says it does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor we are afraid. And it says that is our experience. That is not a theory. That is not just some lovely words on a page. That is the experience of the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous that we get to extrapolate to those of us who have recovered in that fellowship and in this. That is the lived experience of those of us who have recovered as the result of this course of action. That is our experience. And it says that is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. See, I am recovered, but I am not cured. The thing that is asked of me is to continue this process on a daily basis, to continue to grow and seek this experience. Anyone here ever stay well on one drink? Anyone here ever do one line of cocaine and thought, that is sufficient? Anyone here ever go into somebody's medicine cabinet and steal their medication and just take one and thought, you know what? I'm good there. No, you didn't. No, you frickin' didn't. And if you're here today, I know the answer is no. So why would I think I could be satisfied on one spiritual experience? I've got to continue to grow and to seek this thing. So let's pop back to page 24. That's the idea of what our solution is. And now we're going to continue to dive into what our problem is. Very bottom paragraph, page 24. And I'm going to do some more bouncing. I don't think I'm doing well for time. Yeah, we're not doing awful, but I'm going to do some bouncing, so please bounce along with me. So it says, when this sort, bottom paragraph, page 24, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. That's not good news. That sucks. And I want to be very clear. What does it mean to be beyond human aid? The human powers that I have tried are insufficient. Detox, rehab, just going to meetings, psychologists, psychiatrists, relationships, children, the good old geographic, and there's going to the gym, counselors, doctors, all of those things. Now, there is nothing wrong with some of those things. I think I mentioned relationships. That could be a little bit of a red flag. But you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong. And there are times where we do need those things, but they are not a sufficient substitute. Human power, my willpower, my fear, my desire, none of that is sufficient. And unless I am locked up, I'm either going to die from this illness or I am going to put myself in a position of permanent brain injury. That's the prognosis for this illness. Let's be clear. The prognosis for the illness of addiction, as it is laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, is that it is fatal. It is fatal. That is my prognosis. So what it's saying is like, man, if I have this thing, the best that I can do on my own power is to lock myself away or get a bodyguard. We'll talk about that maybe this week, maybe next week, depending on how I do. So I've got to find out if I am that person who is beyond human aid. I've got to figure out whether or not that's me. And so I've got to figure out when it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. So first and foremost, I got to figure out if I got these tendencies. I got to figure out, do I have, is it a little tendy? Not a chicken tendy, but do I got I hope you guys called chicken tenders tendies. If not, that joke made no sense. So let us find out what it means to be an individual with alcoholic tendencies. Let's pop over to page XXX, which always sounds so cool. It's like I'm going to dive out of a friggin' helicopter with a snowboard and a parachute. Woo! You guys remember that movie, Vin Diesel? No, it's okay if you don't. It's okay if you're like, what? And honestly, it's okay if you're like, I can't find page XXX. It's in the doctor's opinion. It's a couple pages in. And where we're going on XXX, it's the bottom full paragraph on the page. It's right after the 5 different types of drinkers, the 5 different types of addicts. This is how we figure out, do I have these tendencies? It says all these and many others. So all these types, doesn't matter, we don't got time to read them today. All these and many others have one symptom in common. So this one symptom that each and every person who is alcoholic or addict tendencies has. And it says they cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So what is the one symptom that every addict has? The allergy of the body. That once I start to use, I cannot control the amount that I take every single time. Now, keep in mind, again, if you're like me, you're like, hey, there was that one time back in 84. I only did one. Now, let's be real. Like, what was my lived experience? Because my lived experience is that addicts, that's almost every time. But also that non-addicts never have that complete loss of control. So is my experience that I have experience with using, with picking up, and having that thing take me where I need more. And the more that I use, the more that I drink, the more that I whatever, the more that I need that next one. Is that my experience? because that is the one symptom we all have in common. But you see, that again, that is the alcoholic tendencies. Okay, the allergy of the body. Fair enough. Let's pop back over to page 24. Now, I'm not spending too much time on the allergy of the body because we have spoken about it as we've gone through this study. But that's what we're talking about. And the allergy of the body, as we read on page XXX, means that I can never, ever, ever safely drink or use again. The only relief for the allergy is total abstinence. That's what it's saying. That's what it said. Okay, so in theory, the solution is abstinence. But back to the bottom of page 24, it says, when this sort of thinking. What is the thinking that we are talking about? Well, the thinking we're talking about is the obsession of the mind. It is what we're talking about from the italics downward. This idea that I have no defense, I have no choice, that when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated, I have a thought that takes me back again and again and again to the first drug or the first drink or the first hit, the first hoot, again, despite the fact that in this moment we can all say, I can never do it again, and I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. That tells me I have this illness. And if I have this illness, I am hopeless. I can never, ever do it again, but I will do it again. Do we see that? Do we see the hopelessness? Man, I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober because once I pick up, I can't control it. But I can't stay sober because all the things that I try on human power are insufficient. And I find myself doing it again and again and again. And it says these stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. Just think armies upon armies of alcoholics, of drug addicts, lemmings jumping off a cliff. That they've staged that in that little documentary, if you're wondering. Those poor lemmings, they just chucked them. Those poor little guys. That's us, though. We're getting chucked off the cliff, little cutie patooties. I'm doomed to die of this thing. And it says, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. Again, as the fatality of this illness is as much a fact as the solution that we have here in Cocaine Anonymous. So it says, but for the grace of God, there have been thousands more convincing demonstrations of the fatality, of the hopelessness of this thing. So many want to stop, but cannot. And if you're here today and you want to stop and you're like, but I can't, I want you to know there's nothing that is wrong with you other than the illness of addiction as it's outlined in this book. That is our problem. And so what we need to do is we need to experience the solution. It goes on to say, there is a solution. And I want to emphasize a couple things. I'm going to start with emphasizing a solution. And I spoke about this when we kicked off the chapter, but it's always good to talk about it again. A solution. In Cocaine Anonymous, we have one solution. We don't have as many solutions as there are drug addicts. And that's good. Because if we had as many solutions as we are drug addicts, I don't know if yours is going to work. Do you know what I mean? I don't have time to try Brian's. I don't have time to try Vanessa's or Dave's or Ruth's or Marianne's and Joanne's. Thank you to the service team. See, I worked that. Oh, and Pauline. Thank you to the service team. Sorry if I missed anyone. I don't have time to try all of those solutions. The relapse is inevitable and it is imminent. It is a ticking time bomb about when I will relapse and I might never come back. I don't have time to try that. What we do have is one solution, and we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this solution works. And the solution that we have in Cocaine Anonymous is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. That is our solution. But I always need to emphasize there is a solution. If you're new here today, there is a solution. If you call yourself a chronic relapser, in and out, there is a solution. If you're just coming back after a relapse, there is a solution. And if you've been around this thing a while and you're starting to experience that pain, where it feels like just your skin doesn't fit and the world isn't right, and you don't know if you want to be here anymore, and you got those problems that are piling up, and we don't think the stupid steps, your stupid God, your stupid whatever, meetings and service is gonna frickin' help. You don't understand. What I want you to know is there is a solution. We have it. And then here's how we get it. This entire paragraph is dedicated to how I get to the spiritual awakening, how I get from the hopelessness to the hope, from the inevitability of the first drink to that position of neutrality, safe and protected. And it kicks off, almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Y'all know what that means? Almost none of us liked the steps. Almost none of us saw the steps on the scroll on the wall or shared on the Zoom screen or on page 59 and thought, oh boy, what a good idea. I can't wait. A searching and fearless moral inventory. I've got a notebook right here. I can't wait. And sharing the contents of this inventory with God and another human being. Oh, why, yes, I'm an open book. No secrets here. You'd like me to sit quietly for how long? A whole hour? Yeah, that's no problem. That sounds like a delight. I know what happens when I get still and quiet. I super enjoy what happens in my little noodle. Delightful. Oh, and then I ask for a power greater than myself to remove from me these defects of character. I don't get to get my little grubby paws in them and manage them myself. That sounds delightful. I don't like managing things. Wonderful. And then I go and I make amends. Even to my ex? Oh boy, I'd love to. I can't wait to see him again. Delightful. And then prayer and meditation and continuing this process and all those steps that say the word God. Oh, I've got no issues there with any of those. No baggage, no issues, no prejudices. I'm good to go. And working with others? Oh yes, addicts, they're known for being so kind, patient, reasonable, not selfish and self-centered, unlike myself, and always punctual. Not a problem. I can't wait. You know what I mean? Almost none of us. In fact, I'm going to go on a limb and say none of us. I won't speak in absolutes, but I mean, we thought this was a good idea. I mean, I thought it applied to all of you. I thought y'all could use some steps. Yeah, I can see your need for inventory, but this couldn't possibly apply to me. And you know what's beautiful about this is that the steps do not care why I take them. You ever hear where I live in the world, there's a big, you got to do it for yourself. No, I don't think that's true. Here's my experience. By the time I got here, I was doing a whole lot for myself and I burnt my life to the ground. And here's the thing, I don't have to wait until I have good motives to work the steps. I don't have to wait until I'm not afraid of the steps to take the actions of the steps. I don't have to wait until I feel worthy of the steps. I don't have to wait until I think they're a good idea. Do you know what I'm saying? That's the good news. I don't have to wait. That's also the bad news, is I've got to do them. Fair enough. I got to do them. And here is my lived experience. Whenever I take the course of action that is laid before me in this book, I get well. I change, and the transformational process happens to me, and I get freedom. And here's also my experience. Every single time I avoid this process, I get unwell, and I get sick. And even if I don't relapse, that is inevitable. It is inevitable. So the beautiful thing is it does not matter my motives, my why, my any of that. If I take this course of action, I can get well. And if I don't, and I have this illness, I probably won't get well. All right, so it goes on to say, it says, but we saw that it really worked in others. And we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. And you see in the 12 and 12 on Tradition 9, it talks about how we have only two disciplinarians, great love and great suffering. We need no others. And the illness of addiction has a job. You see, the illness of addiction has a responsibility to the addict. And that responsibility is great suffering. To beat me into a state of reasonableness. To beat me into that state of hopelessness and futility. That is the responsibility of the illness that is addiction. But there is also a responsibility for the recovered addict. And that responsibility is great love. Great love. And that great love is, of course, the warm welcome, the being here for you, the answering the phone, all of that. But it is also more than that. It is to be armed with the facts about ourselves. It is to be offering a message of depth and weight and an experience. A demonstration that these things work. We saw that it worked in others. That I can see the light that is on in your eyes, the hope that is in your spirit. When I come to the end of myself and I see that you did what I did, you felt the way that I felt, you went through what I went through, and you are free. That is the responsibility of somebody like me who has recovered, to be a demonstration of this power. And it says, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. Solved. Again, it's not cured, but it is solved. The problem is not on me because I'm continuing to take the daily actions of these steps and I'm living in this position of neutrality. And by the way, when we are approached, it is the responsibility of those of us who have recovered to approach those who are new. I've got a handbag. Listen, it's 2025. I had to double check the year. It's 2025. We don't even got to wear pants to do 12-step work if we're on Zoom. I'm just going to throw that out there. Like, please wear your trousers if you're out in person. But listen, if we're on Zoom, you keep the camera up, you don't got to wear pants. I'm wearing pants, I promise. Pants on. Yeah, just in case you're getting a little nervous. We don't even got to wear pants. So the bare minimum is get the newcomer's number, if they'll give it to you. Get their number and reach out to them. And it says, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Now, the simple kit of spiritual tools is the 12 steps as outlined in this book. And again, I have a responsibility to those who are new, to those who are struggling. It does no good if I tell you how to use a lug wrench and I've never used one in my life. It's no good if I tell you how to use a power drill and I've never used one. It doesn't matter if I have strong opinions about screwdrivers, the utensil, not the drink. And if I don't know how to use one, I need to be adept at these tools, not only so that I can stay alive and free, but more important, or just as important, so that I can show you how you can live alive and free. And so I've got to demonstrate how to use this simple kit of spiritual tools. And my job, I can't make you use it, but I can lay them at your feet and I can show you how they worked with me. It says we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. The previous time in this book was in Bill's story. On page 8, it speaks about being catapulted into a fourth dimension of existence. With both instances of the fourth dimension, we are seeing that we get there with some velocity, but from page 8 to page 25, we got like rocket boosters on that bad boy. You know what I'm saying? And the takeaway is that it does not take long to get well. Sometimes it's like, 50 miles in the woods. Actually, I'm Canadian. We're in the UK. I don't know how many kilometers, but we'll say 50 kilometers out in the woods. 50 kilometers back. Now, that's not my experience. My experience is if I work this thing quickly and thoroughly, and those two are meant to live and work together, I can get well very quickly in Cocaine Anonymous. I don't have to wait. I don't have to wait to get well. I don't have to wait to get better. I don't have to wait to feel better. I don't have to wait to have the transformation happen in my life. When we talk about that fourth dimension of existence, that fourth dimension is seeing the world at a different level. There is an author by the name of C.S. Lewis, and he gave the best description of the fourth dimension that I had ever heard. And it's imagine that I'm a little stick figure. And I'm living in 2D. I'm in the 2D world, and y'all are out in the third dimension, and you're seeing that depth, and you start to draw what looks like a road, and you start to draw trees, and you tell me, look at the trees and look at the road, look at the path that is laid before you. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? It's a series of triangles. And what happens is when I get to go from the second to the third dimension, I'm no longer a little stick person. I see it depth. I see the road. I see the trees. And it's like that from the third to the fourth. We see at a deeper depth, and that is experiential. And it says the great fact. And so what we're talking about in this paragraph is the solution. What we're talking about here is the spiritual awakening. Now, we were talking about it in a very practical sense on page 84. The obsession is removed. The obsession is gone. The obsession is taken from us. But now we are seeing again what another way to look at and describe and experience the spiritual awakening. It says, the great fact is just this and nothing less. The great fact. The great fact. Not wish, not maybe, not could be, not keep coming back, not we don't know what happens here. No, we know what happens here. We know how to get it. We know how to experience it. It is the great fact. It is not a theory. And it's this and nothing less. They're not mincing their words. This is what is available to each and every one of us. And it says that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. I needed something that was deep, and I needed something that was effective, because play the tape to the end. Just don't pick up. Just go to meetings. There's no depth, and it doesn't work. Just focus on your career. Just focus on your family. There is no depth, and it is not effective. But what we have is something that is deep and is effective. And this is a description of the spiritual awakening. It says, which have revolutionized our whole attitude. So a revolutionary change in my attitude, the way in which I show up and I see the world. Revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. So a revolutionary change in the way I look at and show up to life, the people around me, and this universe, this world that I am a part of. That's what it looks like. And it goes on to say, the central fact of our lives today, not an over there idea, not a conception, not a belief. No, but the central fact, not theory, not wish, not maybe, not could be, but the central fact of our lives today, and this is what's available to each and every one of us, is the absolute certainty. Absolute certainty. Again, we are not mincing words. That our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. So the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that this power has entered into our heart and from our heart into our lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Now that's one way to read it. The other way to read it is that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives, as in lives within our heart in a way which is indeed miraculous. But here's the thing, where is one of the places in which this power can be found? Within our heart. So it makes sense that what I've got to do is I've got to clear away the stuff inside of me, that weight that is on my heart, that weight that is on my soul, so that I can experience this power. That's what I've got to do. So it says he has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. Do you know what I could never do by myself? Permanent, contented sobriety. That is impossible for somebody like me, but so much more. You see, if I'm coming here for mere abstinence, totally fine. Who cares why we're here? So you know what I mean? Doesn't matter why I'm here. If I get well, if I take the actions, I get well. But you see, if I settle for mere abstinence, I'm missing so much more. Man, there is a depth to this thing. And I'll be honest with you guys, I never left a drink undrunk. unless it was one of the ones with the cigarette butts in it, in which case, oopsie doops. Yeah, I didn't, when I was smoking crack, man, I would push that pipe. Ooh, it was pristine. I was like little Miss Clean over here. I was carpet surfing. Your floors had never been so clean. You know what I'm saying? Anyone here ever done half a line? Absolutely. So why would I leave this thing and try to settle with mere sobriety? In fact, we speak about sobriety is absolutely not a solution to the illness that is outlined in this book. Sobriety is not a solution to addiction. We know that to be true because every time we took that first one, we were sober. Every time I relapsed, I did it from a sober position. There is so much that is available, and I miss it if I'm just like, I'm sober. Ugh, there is freedom on offer. It goes on to say, if you are seriously alcoholic as we were. And when I got here, I was like, I hope not. I hope I'm not as bad as you guys. I want to do what y'all have to do. You know what I mean? I would show up and I was wearing pants, but I tell you, they were my judgy pants. You know what I mean? And I was judging, and I'm looking for all the ways I'm not like you, all the ways that I'm different, all the ways I don't have to do all the things that you have to do, but I also desperately wanted to belong. So it says, if you're seriously alcoholic as we were, I hope I'm not. We believe that there is no middle of the road solution. I was looking for one of those. I was hoping for that. Like I wanted to be in the Half Measures Club, I wanted that. And then it says we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And that's one of those lines where I'm like, how'd they know? How'd they know? You see, my life was impossible when I was using, because, man, I was crossing lines I never wanted to cross. I was burning it down again and again. But my life was just as impossible sober. I couldn't do it sober either. And of course, just because I would always go back again and again to that first whatever. But also, man, I couldn't fit and be okay in my own skin. There was a depression that was so bad I could barely get out of bed. And anxiety so bad it felt like somebody was stabbing my shoulder blades. It was like my skin didn't fit. It was like I was a raw exposed nerve ending, and for some ungodly reason the wind was blowing and existence was too much and I couldn't do it, and I just need something to take the edge off. You see, life was impossible. I could not do life. And it says that if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, I got to figure out if I'm in that region from which there is no return through human aid. Now let's go back again to page 24, bottom paragraph, because that was what qualified us to being beyond human aid. It says, when this sort of thinking, the mental obsession, do I have examples from my own life of the obsession of the mind? When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, the allergy of the body, do I have examples and experiences of once I started, I could not stop? If that is me, it says he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. Crap, that's not good news. That's me. That's me. I am beyond human aid. So if I have, back on page 25, if we have passed into the region from which there's no return through human aid, that's me. I am beyond human aid. We had but two alternatives, two options. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other to accept spiritual help. And the reality is, if I have this illness, it's pretty black and white. The situation that I am in is pretty black and white. Whether I think so or not, whether I like it or not, whether I want to or not, and let's be honest, we all see these two choices and we want to like, ooh, okay, but like how bad are those bitter ends going to be? You know what I mean? Like, do you really want me to make amends to my ex? I'm wrestling with it. I'm fighting it. I don't want to do it. But here's the thing. That is the reality that we are at step one. I will relapse. And if I do, I'm going to continue on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation. And the reality is, if I do not choose with everything that is in me to apply these 12 steps as a way of life, that's the spiritual help, by the way. It is the 12 steps as outlined in this book as a way of life to produce and to then grow a spiritual experience. That is the spiritual help. If I do not choose that actively and intentionally, I have chosen the alcoholic death. Whether I think so or not, whether I believe it or not, whether I think I'm different or not, if I do not actively choose to do all of this as a way of life, I have chosen to go on to the bitter ends. But here's the thing. Once I am aware of that black and white predicament, and I grab a hold of this spiritual help with everything that is in me, and I do this thing quickly and thoroughly, and I continue it as a way of life, man, the world as it was when I got here was pretty black and white, and most of it was pretty awful. But you see, if I accept this black and white reality, this predicament at the bottom of page 25, and I dive into this work, man, the world, the colors come back on. It's like the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy opens the door. You know, the colors are on. And I can see the world as it really is. But I've got to see the black and white predicament from which I came, from which I am at as an addict. And it says, this we did because we honestly wanted to, and we were willing to make the effort. Oh, that's 45 minutes. So, and that's a natural stopping point. I'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.